Good detail. Not a bad match. Hello again, everyone. Welcome back to the basement shop. Let's talk knobs. Whether you're restoring a vintage radio or TV, sometimes you need a knob that's missing, and sometimes you can't find one. So what do? Well, you usually find something that looks close, or if you have two knobs on the front, you'll replace both of them with a matched pair that looks better. But still, you don't have the original knob that belonged on the set. So let me show you what could be a possible solution for you. We're going to be making a knob. And we basically need 3 ingredients. We need to make a mold. That's what the silicone rubber is for. The 2-part, you mix it together, put the knob in there, and it sets up into a solid piece of rubber like this. This is a mold release spray. This sells this, but I found with this silicone rubber resin that I've used, really don't need that spray, but if you want to be safe, put a coat of the mold release on it, down in the mold before you pour the plastic casting. And then you need some plastic. So this is again a 2-part. It's called Smooth Cast 300. This one is. This one is white. Now you can get black and white, and you could tint the mold, I'm sure, to the color you wanted. I haven't got into that part of it yet. I just mixed it in white, the ones I've done, and once they come out of the mold, after I sanded them, got them looking okay, then I just painted them. I'm going to take you through the process. We'll show you what we ended up with, and it's really a good solution if you want to get into trying to do this. It can be kind of expensive if you're just doing a knob or two, because if I'm not mistaken, this rubber was like 30 bucks and the white plastic was less than 20. Now the black is in the mid-20s, so probably got $55 or $60 invested in these 3 products. Now the rubber, of course, it don't last too long if you, especially if you're pouring a big mold like this. I had a large TV knob that I was doing. In fact, there's the shape of it, you can see there. So I had to have a larger mold. But this mold, this is a predictor on-off knob, and it took very little. But you can go through quite a bit of the silicone rubber if you do several different type knobs. The plastic, there's enough of it in those 2 bottles to last a long time for me, because you got to realize, like on this predictor on-off mold, you only pouring the plastic down in that one small little part of the mold. It doesn't take much. So plenty of plastic to do several knobs. Silicone rubber mold, yeah, you can go through that pretty fast. So let's get into it. This is off the Motorola TV, radio, phonograph combo. Has 2 of these knobs and one's missing. And I think the odds of ever finding that knob is going to be pretty slim. Now if we look at this really close, there's a couple of tabs that stick out on each side. That grabs the shaft that these push onto. But I'm getting ahead of myself. First, we need to see if we can even make a knob, cast one that looks like this. And then we'll figure that out later on. This is PVC material, 3/4 inch, really slick. So I've cut me a box. I'm going to make a mold of this old knob. That'll be a silicone rubber type material. It's 2-part that you mix together. When it sets up, then you can just peel the knob out of it. And then you've got a mold that you can use to pour the liquid plastic resin. But I'm going to air nail all of this together that you see. But I got to have a way of getting under the edge of it, underneath it, to prise it out once it sets up. So I'm just going to glue this. Use some hot glue like that. And then I can pop that off, pull the mold out, pour the plastic in, and hopefully we'll make a knob that looks like that. I do need to figure out how to mount this knob. I'm thinking drill a hole in the bottom of this and put a piece of wood or something, and that'll hold it in position when we pour our mold. I think here's our solution. This fits tight. So I'll bore a hole in the bottom of the box. That'll give us something to mount the knob on. Okay, found a bit test here. And while it's not super tight, it's tight enough. Just a little bit of glue there in the end. That should work. And I marked where I want to bore my hole. Easy way of doing that. Made a mark on each side of the dowel, both ways. And where they intersect, that's where you want the hole. To get the proper height of the dowel, we just push it in the knob. Put the knob in the mold. And we'll pull it back slightly. Put some glue around it. Now I need to put some tape on these openings in the knob. When we pour our mold material in there, it'll run down just to the bottom edge of this cutout. And the tape will stop it. And we do want this as clean as possible before we make our mold. So cleaning it down in the crevices, making sure there's nothing in the wavy M part of it here in the front. All right, tape's on. Also put a piece of tape around the shaft because the shaft has some slots in it and we don't want the mold material to get inside the shaft. The silicone rubber that we're going to make our mold with. How much silicone do we need to make a mold? Well, I've taken this container and it's just slightly bigger than my box, so I made a mark as where it would cover up the knob. That's right in there. Then I have some small cups here that I'm going to pour the water in to see how many cups it takes to fill that up. Took 10 of these to equal the amount of water I had in the big cup. And we want to stir this for 3 to 5 minutes before we pour it in the mold. The instructions said to stir this slow. You'll create less bubbles, so what I'm trying to do, I've stirred this for 4 minutes, which is right in between the recommendation that they say, between 3 and 5. We're over the top of the knob, probably a good ½ inch, so should be plenty good enough. Definitely want to get all of this out of here, because it's going to set up anyway, so we might as well pour it in the mold. It says in the instructions, setup time is 4 hours. Now this would not be a cheap way of making a knob. You can see I've used half of each container, well, close to half. You do get a manual with this. I read it, and that's how I knew about how long to stir it and not to stir too hard, or you'll create more bubbles in it, and that's what you don't want. So you do get some instructions. Wonder if that'll set up in that cup, and I can peel it out. But there's still some in the bottom there. It's been 16 hours. So now let's open it up. This is the end that I glued. Looks like it held pretty well. It's tight. There we go. Get this stick pulled out. All right, I'm up under the knob. Been thinking about how we're going to get this out of here. I think the best option is to cut this underneath the back of the knob all the way around, slowly peel it away. That, because we can't get the old knob out without. Well, I hope I haven't cut it too close to the front of the knob. I can see. Okay, there's a knob profile. Been done just a little trimming on the mold and no damage to the knob. So it wasn't that big a deal anyway, but did do some trimming. Cleaned it, and then I've sprayed it with the release agent. Now we need to put the mold back together. You'll notice that X on the end, I marked it before I cut it apart. That way the mold goes back together the way it came apart. Just some masking tape, hold the two molds back together. It says you want to stir them, so I have a couple of stir sticks. I'll be mixing up this small cup full, so half part A, half part B. I stirred this for approximately a minute because this sets up pretty fast, so a minute is plenty of stirring time. I only used about half of that, so I hope that's enough. I hope it's down in there. where it needs to be. I'm not going to pull it out in 7 to 10 minutes. I'm going to wait a little longer than that, but we can probably tell by on top here what's happening. Been 45 minutes. I'll be honest, that's better than I thought it would. Well, it looks like a knob. While I'm somewhat satisfied with that first one that I made, I'm going to do one more because it takes so little of the plastic. And this one, I poured the front part of the knob in the bottom mold until it was just to the top. And then I set the top mold over it, and that's the shaft of the knob. And then I poured it full. So we're going to try it this way, see if there's any difference. It's got some weight on it there to hold the two pieces together. That one turned out really well. And there's our two knobs. We'll let these cure a couple of days before we proceed. Then we have to figure out how to make this shaft work. Okay, knobs are fully cured. So now let's concentrate on that shaft and see how we can drill that to make it fit the TV. All right, both knobs sanded. That was the first one that we did with the one mold, all in one pour. This one's the one where I did it in two sections. You can kind of see the line around the shaft there where it joins the front. But they both look okay. I think this one looks a little better, got less defects in it. Like this one, the edge is kind of rough. Where this one, it looks pretty good. There's those two little nubs that stick out. And that's what goes onto the shaft. So we need to leave those, which means I need a really small bit. We'll bore a hole here and here. And then I'll take a Dremel tool and shape it to where it looks like that. And first two holes bored. Now we'll take the Dremel tool and shape it. Have it in my clamp where it won't be moving, using a real small bit. So let's see what we can come up with here. Not quite sure if that's enough, but let's take it up to the TV and just see if it'll even start on the shaft. Well, I'm not quite through with it, but it does start on the shaft. It's just a little tight. It gets tight around the outside part of the holes we bored, so I'll relieve them just a little bit. There's the original. Put in a smaller bit. So let's go try it. Well, went on easier. Now the real test is over here on the fine tuning. So that's definitely going to work. I'm happy with both of those. They fit tight. Now we just gotta see if we can get them painted to where they'll look correct. Let's tackle the paint. This old knob is pretty much the color of the cabinet. Kind of a mahogany. Here's what I'm going to do on the paint. If we look at that old knob, it's a little darker than that plum, dark plum color. So I think if you add a little bit of brown to that plum, we can get close to the color of it. Now, this is acrylic paint, which is water-based, and it will scratch off really easy. But if I can get the color correct, I can put some clear over the top, just some spray clear, and that'll protect the paint and hold up for a long time. Okay, used dark plum, brown, and a little bit of black. Little revision on the color. Brown, plum, and black, but I added just a little bit of red, just a drop or two, and I think that made it look a lot closer. It's not going to be perfect, but as long as both of them match, that's really all that's important. Paint's dry. Now we're ready to paint our gold, and this is Testors. This is water-based, so we'll get that painted and we'll see what that looks like, and then some clear on the outside. Well, what do you think? Original, the two I made. I think we're good on the paint. We'll let it dry, and then we're going to spray some clear on and call this finished. Touched up the gold on the original too while I had the paint out. Coat of clear on the two new knobs. Can you tell which is the original? It's the center one. I think I did a pretty good job of mixing that paint to match that color. Now we have us two new knobs. Let's see how they look. They fit and they work. Before we wrap up the video, here's a couple of Philco Predicta knobs that I've cast. There's the two rubber molds. That's on off. And that's a contrast. The Predicta on off knob, there's a shaft design that we need. Notice that insert that goes in the center of the shaft. That's what pushes onto the shaft of the control. So I'll bore the center hole, and then I'll take a Dremel tool, relieve each side, so that insert will slide in to the new shaft. This is a bit size that I've come up with to bore the main hole. Let's see how this works. Okay, after drilling the center and then taking a Dremel tool and relieving each side, you see that insert slides right in. It's a good fit. Contrast knob works. Now we need to do something about the color difference between these three knobs and the new knobs. So I'll be painting the new knobs to match the three knobs that are already on the set. I think I have a color picked out that will work. It's in almond white. So let me get these cleaned up and then we'll put some paint on. And just a couple of coats of paint. I think that's going to match pretty well. Looks okay. And that's going to wrap up this video on creating new plastic knobs. If you're thinking about attempting this yourself, go for it. Thanks for watching. Hope you've enjoyed the video. If you did, give us a like, comment, and subscribe to our channel. Thanks for your support. See you next time.